I recently trained Jiu Jitsu for 90 days, and at the end of it, I decided to quit. And so today I'm going to be walking you through my experiences with it and explain how I came to that decision. Now, if you're tuning into this video, chances are you've probably heard about the world of Jiu Jitsu, perhaps from the likes of Joe Rogan or other prominent figures who seem to all proclaim about the wonders of Jiu Jitsu. And for me personally, there were two main reasons why I wanted to try Jiu Jitsu. Firstly, I just wanted to try some new physical activity. And secondly, I heard that Jiu Jitsu can be good for the mental side of things and can help with things like focus, attention, and helping you be more present in situations. And so after some deliberation, I finally decided to give it a go. And to start with today, I'm going to run you through all of my mishaps with Jiu Jitsu, of which there were a fair few. And these started in session 1. Well, not really even official session 1, as the first session that I had was just the teachers trying to teach me how to roll and fall properly. That's it. And it was all going okay until they tried to teach me this backwards roll where my legs go that way and my neck has to face that way. And before you know it, I've just essentially rolled over on my neck, and I walked away from that first session with a completely screwed up neck, having made contact with 0 people. A wonderful start, you could say. Nevertheless, the following day, I attended my first proper session. And to start with, they line you up in rank order, and there's all this bowing and shaking hands, and it's all a bit weird, to be honest. After that, they're straight into showing you technique. And to be honest, at this point, they may have been speaking another language to me. When they start going how the right hand goes here and left here, and you apply pressure to that leg, and then gravity will take care of itself, and voila! Meanwhile, I'm just standing there thinking to myself, I can't remember any of that, and I proceed to fail to do any technique correctly to begin with. Now, how the classes I went to worked were that you get shown some technique for the first half of the session, say, and then towards the end, you're into rolling, which is where you're sparring with another person. And particularly in those first few sessions, when you know absolutely fuck all, it's almost an amusing thing trying to fight with another person, and it can often turn into a bit of a death match between two new people who have absolutely no clue what they are doing. And from sparring is where 3 things happened to me that I wanted to share. Firstly, little annoying bastard cuts all along your hands and your feet, primarily from all the rubbing against the mats and other people's gis. Now, I don't know if I just have particularly pussy-like skin or something, but I was getting so many of these little fuckers. And over time, I learned that to deal with these cuts, you should put a plaster on them, followed by some tape. However, that was not something I knew initially, and my failure to contain these cuts in my 3rd session resulted in me absolutely drenching in blood my training partner's new white gi that he had been telling me all about. A real great first impression with a lot of the guys that train there. And I could kind of see it in people's eyes after that they didn't want to train with the weird bleeding guy. The second thing that I wanted to mention was the old didn't tap early enough. As when you first start Jiu Jitsu, they tell you how you should leave your ego at the door and just tap if you're ever in a bad situation. Now that's all good and well, but once you actually start fighting some little fucker that's half your size, yet getting the better of you, sense tends to go out of the window. And yep, you guessed it, that's what happened to me. As this one guy had me in this arm bar, but he only kind of had it, and I was able to almost just hold my arm there, and so I felt okay, until the little shit did something, boop! Elbow absolutely munched. Now thankfully I wasn't injured too badly, but it was a good couple of weeks of my elbow hurting like real hell. And that was a lesson to just tap early. And that then leads me to the final thing I wanted to mention from sparring. Injuries. First there was the elbow, then after about 5 sessions I bruised my pec, and that kept me out for about 3 weeks. I then came back and did about another 5 sessions and was starting to actually feel like I was getting the hang of it a little bit when pop! Screwed my rib up, and quite badly actually. And after that one I felt like I've got to let this heal properly. And it wasn't until about 4 months later when my rib finally stopped hurting. Nevertheless, I decided that I wanted to give it another go. And so rejoined and did about another 5 sessions, and oh, what happened? Bloody pec again! Now, at this point I thought, fuck this. This jiu-jitsu thing is clearly just not for me. but I do hate quitting things. And so ultimately I decided to give it one more go. And thankfully the pet wasn't too bad this time and only kept me out for a couple weeks. And during this time I did try and work on my strength and mobility in my pec and my rib area, as I was clearly susceptible to something in there. And finally, after that time, I was on a roll. I was training 3 times a week for about a month and really felt like I was actually starting to get into it at a beginner level and was learning the techniques and was even getting a bit better sparring with people, and I was enjoying it. Until the straw that broke the camel's back. After no more than 3 months of training jiu-jitsu, I started to get fucking cauliflower ear. A big squishy bit in my right ear that I had to get my sister-in-law to drain. Unbelievable. I mean, I knew cauliflower ear was a thing going into jiu-jitsu, but I thought it was only people that have been training all their life that get it, or world champion black belts, not some schmuck white belt that's been training for barely 3 months. And that was it for me. As I thought, if I'm getting this after 3 months, my ear is gonna be absolutely mangled if I kept doing this. And I'll be honest, I just really did not want something that looked like a gyoza for an ear. Call me vain, but bleeding on people, getting injuries, that's one thing. But fucking cauliflower ear, nah, that was it for me. However, whilst I probably made it sound like my time training jiu-jitsu was a complete nightmare, I'll be honest. Even after getting cauliflower ear, I was still debating for ages whether to stop or not, as I was actually enjoying my time training jiu-jitsu. So let's talk about some of the good of jiu-jitsu in my opinion. For one, it's a great physical workout, no doubt about it. It's great for your cardio, you'll be learning how to move your body in ways that you probably haven't before. And I think it's actually good for your flexibility and mobility to a certain extent. Secondly, it's a massive challenge and a humbling experience too. I'm 6'1" and about 14 stone, and I like to think, rightly or wrongly, that I'm a pretty big and strong dude. But you step into jiu-jitsu and you get manhandled by someone that's half your size, and you realize what a different arena you're in. It also is very difficult just to learn and remember all the new moves and techniques that you are trying to get taught. And it clearly is something that does take 10 plus years to reach anywhere near mastery type level. Thirdly, I can see that there are mental benefits too, as you really do need to be focused and paying attention when you're trying to learn these new moves and techniques. And then when you're sparring with someone that is literally trying to strangle you, you have no choice but to be present and in the moment. And whilst I only did do it for 90 days, I do feel like I was a little bit calmer during that time, and I think it was helping with my attention. And so I reckon there are significant mental benefits if it is something that you do long term. I also found that it's really quite addicting jiu-jitsu, as once you do start learning the techniques and moves, you feel like you just want to learn more and more quickly and get your skills up, so that ultimately you can be the one that's starting to control people instead of the other way around. I also found that there is a real sense of community, as all the people that I came across were super nice and always willing to ask questions. You also do come across all sorts of people from all different backgrounds, and it did just feel like a whole collection of people that you would probably never come across otherwise, all bonded by this slightly weird activity. And finally, there is something quite primal about fighting, and at the end of a sparring session, you do feel this real sense of achievement, knowing that you've pushed yourself out of your comfort zone and done something that you would not normally do. And so overall, I definitely do get the appeal of jiu-jitsu and can see why so many people do fall in love with it. I think if I hadn't got the cauliflower ear, I definitely would have trained for at least a year. That was the goal that I had in my head, as I was hoping that if I could have trained consistently for a year, I maybe could have got close to blue belt level, which is the first belt up after white belt. Whether or not that was achievable, I guess we will never know. But I thought that if I could get to blue belt, that would mean that I've got a good fundamental knowledge of jiu-jitsu, and I could have then decided from there whether to continue or not. And obviously, since I only did do jiu-jitsu for 90 days, we will never know if I would have continued beyond that point. However, if I am to think about it, I do think the injury aspect of jiu-jitsu is a bit sucky. I mean, beyond the injuries that I've mentioned, I also had problems with my fingers, my left shoulder always felt messed up, my ribs were always just sore, and generally my body was hurting. Now, I'm sure you could try and focus your strength and mobility work to try to minimize the risk of injuries, but from what I understand, I do think injuries are a bit of an inevitable part of jiu-jitsu. And because of that, I'm not sure if I could have seen myself doing jiu-jitsu long-term or for the rest of my life. As whilst I was enjoying it, I'm not sure I was enjoying it quite enough to accept that constant risk of injury and being in pain. And maybe that's me being a bit of a wuss, but there you go. But overall, jiu-jitsu gets a thumbs up from me. I respect the hell out of it and think it's an awesome sport, and maybe I am just a lot more susceptible to some of these things than most people. And so I think if you are curious in it, you should give it a go and see whether you enjoy it. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please check out my previous upload here, and please do make sure to subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one.